game over. Wasted. You died. Whether it's falling into a pit or getting absolutely dunked on by a 12-year-old, death is a prominent force in video games. However, something that's fascinating about the world of video games is its ability to evoke a plethora of emotions around the same idea. Sometimes when you die in a game, you're laughing so hard that tears are flying out of your eyes.
I'm going to die!
And other times, well, you look like me at the end of Toy Story 3. How do video games manage this? Well, let's take a look at some different ways death is handled in them, shall we? If you've ever played any type of first-person shooter, you're definitely familiar with this. When a game goes this route, it's fully embracing the fact that it's a game. Sure, you don't want to die, but if you do, you don't really sweat it because your character's just gonna respawn anyway. And having no limits to your lives typically leads to a lot of funny shenanigans. However, having infinite lives isn't all fun and games. Sure, it can alleviate some stress, but even under those conditions, it can still lead to frustration. Like in Zelda when you get to the dungeon boss, only to die near the end of the battle. Yeah, you might not have to do the entire dungeon again, but the game's gonna spawn you outside and you're gonna have to walk your ass all the way back in. It's just a whole thing. Ugh. And don't even get me started on Souls games, like what the actual fuck? This can also make for addicting platformers like Super Meat Boy, where death is pretty much negligible. This man doesn't even skip a beat, he just splatters into a million pieces, immediately responds, looks at you dead in the eye and says, "Do it again, I can take it." This approach to death is what I'd like to call old-fashioned in the world of video games. Just look at most early games. You got 3 lives. While this gives you a few tries to get something right, it still forces you to be far more intentional. The reason why this is such a classic formula is because back when games were mostly in arcades, it made sense to limit the lives, so it would limit the playtime. People could lose one of their lives by either dying, duh, or running out of time. I mean, I also talk about this in my video about time limits in video games. If you want to check that out, it's pretty cool, but anyways. Once video games started making the move to consoles, there were a lot of games that adopted this formula. But since a player's playtime could now be a lot longer, game designers decided to pad the games with something I'd like to call extra lives. These extra lives could be hidden, like in Mario, or maybe you'd have to collect a certain amount of items, like in Sonic. Whatever the case, this edition allowed there to be a finite amount of lives with a certain level of forgiveness. Unless you're me, in which case you'll walk right by them because mama didn't raise no bitch. If you play a game where you have 1 life, you like to sweat. These games are not for the faint of heart. This is gaming on the edge. In all seriousness though, games where you don't have a respawn are pretty intense. While I did say a lot of FPS games had infinite lives, they also have game modes where you only get 1 life. The first that comes to mind is Call of Duty's Search and Destroy mode, also known as CSGO. This use of only having 1 life works so well in a combat setting. There's one team playing on the defensive and the other on the offensive. Last one alive wins. Pretty simple. Having no respawns forces the players to communicate in order to strategize to get the right positioning. In these game modes, positioning is key. Since you have no respawns, you gotta strategize, you gotta communicate. This also goes for battle royale games like PUBG and Fortnite. Although I have some beef with Fortnite because the building mechanic just shits all over this. Like little Timmy over here could be running through the field like a dumbass, and the moment I fire 1 shot, he'll build a 5-star hotel. Yeah, I know, I just talked about having 1 life before, and those games definitely take a swing at it, but these games full on commit to the idea. Like, you ever play Minecraft? Oh yeah, super fun, silly game, love it, Oh, you thought this was a kid's game. You thought this was a little baby game for babies. Yeah, well, if you think losing 200 hours worth of progress after dying from a creeper is for babies, then I'm a fucking newborn. Seriously though, having a game that you literally can't access again when you die is such a wild and honestly existential concept. And while Minecraft is a very mainstream example of this, some of my favorite games that use this approach are actually Flash games. The 2 that immediately come to mind are You Only Live Once and One Chance. You Only Live Once is about a guy named Jermaine whose girlfriend gets kidnapped by Sir Giant Pink Lizard. I'm not making this up. And it's your job to rescue her. Meanwhile, One Chance is about Dr. John Pilgrim, who only has 6 days to save the world from a disease that kills all living cells in a human's body. Yeah, these are pretty different. But even though these 2 games are wildly different, the way they gave the players 1 life was the same. Since these were Flash games within a browser, it could be programmed with that in mind. If you died in the game and thought, oh, I'm just gonna refresh the page and play it again, yeah, wrong. No, you can't do that. You know why? Because it stores your data. Your data's there. You can't play the game again. It's already happened. Sorry about your luck. Although I guess you could technically delete your data, but that's not the point. I'll tell you from personal experience, the first time I played One Chance and tried to refresh the page only to see that there was nothing I could do, I was pretty shocked. When a game can get you this invested in a story and then hit you with something like that, it affects you. Which segues greatly into... Yeah, of course I had to cap it off with this. The deaths that everyone hates to see, the ones that make our eyes sweat. Sad. Seeing a game take on such a heavy narrative can really stick with you. And with that being said, these are some of the games that have stuck with me over the years. While Sarah's death in The Last of Us was definitely shocking to me, and Lee's death in The Walking Dead made me tearbend, there's one video game in particular that approached death in a way that changed how I looked at video games forever. When I saw Halo Reach for the first time, I knew it was going to be different, but I didn't know just how different. I mean, I was 11, I'd only ever played Halo 3 before this, so I was used to being Master Chief, the guy that always just like absolutely drop-kicked the Covenant Armada, the guy that like finished the fight, you know? But you're not Master Chief in this game, you're Noble Six. And as the name suggests, the Spartan is part of a group called the Noble Team. And boy was this team goated. Like, the game introduces them so well. You just, as a kid, you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is the coolest team ever. We can literally do anything, nothing's gonna stop us. Yeah, this game makes you watch every single one of them die. I'm not still scarred by it. And bro, don't even get me started on the ending. Like, dude, that shit's sad. I remember me and my friends trying to play the Lone Wolf mission over and over, hoping there was another ending, but that just wasn't the case. There wasn't another ending. There was only one way this was gonna go down, and my little 11-year-old mind just couldn't take it. I mean, I've played plenty of horror games, but to this day, that's the most helpless I've ever felt in a video game. Death is a part of life. It's something that most people don't like to think about, because you know what? Death's scary, but you know what? It doesn't have to be scary, because everybody dies, just like everybody poops. Make that a book, Everybody Dies. Probably wouldn't sell very well, but anyway. I think that some games can give people a really distorted view of death, while others can provide an experience that sparks deep contemplation of the topic. I know that I can't cover every game, so I would love to hear some thoughts in the comments. How do you see death portrayed in video games, and what are some standout moments that have stuck with you over the years? Now, if you'll excuse me, I have 200 hours worth of Minecraft to make up for because Mr. Green Boy couldn't stay in his freaking lane!